Hey guys, so we all liked the Four Nations face-off, right? Right until the end, I really liked it. Except for all that other stuff. Anyway, I've decided to take that concept and take it further. We're doing the Two Nations face-off. We're saying, I'm sorry, Finland and Sweden. You're not invited this time. We're making 12 teams out of just the two North American countries. Everybody says, oh, Canada could field 2 teams. Oh, the US could field 2 teams. They're both fielding 6. So what I've done is I've split each of the 2 countries up into 6 regions. And each of those regions will have 2 lines, 2 defense pairings, and 2 goalies if possible. One region only has 1. Now for Canada, it's pretty straightforward, at least for the first 4 regions. Ontario, British Columbia, Quebec, Alberta. Sure. And then I've combined the 2 prairie provinces into one. I'm sorry if that deeply offends anybody from Manitoba or Saskatchewan. And then I have a big conglomeration, which is all of the territories, which is just one guy, and all of the maritime provinces. With the US, it gets a little more complicated. I have New England, which is Massachusetts, Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, and Rhode Island. The tri-state region, which is Connecticut, New York, and New Jersey. The Rust Belt, which is Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Michigan. The Midwest, which is Wisconsin, Illinois, Minnesota, Iowa, and Indiana. Then it starts to really get wacky with from the mountains to the prairies, which I will put the big map right here of where the mountains and the prairies go. And then non-traditional, which is everything else. Alaska, California, Florida being the main carriers here. So I've made all of these teams, and you can disagree with them or agree with them. So a couple rules here for naming the teams themselves. I am going by where the player was born, with 2 exceptions. Sean Couturier, I'm not putting with Arizona or anywhere. And William Nylander, I'm not putting with Alberta. He's Swedish. I'm sorry. So I will run through each of the teams that I've made and rank them, starting at the bottom, number 12, Quebec. Yeah, I didn't expect these guys to be so low. First line, we have Marchessault, Dubois, and Lafreniere. Second line, Huberdeau, Dano, Drouin. Defense, we have Chabot and Savard, and then Matheson and Letang. And in net, we have Sam Montembeault starting in front of very old Marc-Andre Fleury. This team, very simply, does not have the star power that a lot of our other squads are going to have. It's not really any bad players. Some of the teams have to bring some questionable guys along, but they just do not have the upper end to compete with some of the squads that we're going to see a little bit later. The defense, especially, your best defenseman is maybe Mike Matheson or Thomas Chabot. Jonathan Drouin is good. So the strategy for this team is probably to put Phil Dano against the other team's best player, which will work okay, but I don't think their top forward line really compares to even a lot of the second lines that we'll see going on a little later. Next up, we have Quebec's kind of neighbor, the Maritimes and Territories, and this team suffers from the exact opposite problem. They have the star power, Sidney Crosby, Nathan MacKinnon, Brad Marchand on the top line, but after that top line, this team is frighteningly bad. I don't mind Dylan Cousins, Dawson Mercer, and Alex Killorn, but the defense is abysmal. I think Noah Dobson's a really good player, just don't ask Islanders fans if he is. And then the second pairing is the healthy scratch duo of Graves and Phil Myers. In net, we have Jake Allen and Calvin Pickard. I really like the star power. They have much more punch with Crosby, Marchand, McKinnon than Quebec does. This team's not going anywhere, though. They're getting eliminated in the first round. I hate to do this, but we're going with 3 Canadian teams in a row as the bottom 3. I'm sorry to the Prairies. Now, they have 4 guys who represented Canada at the Four Nations: Mark Stone, Brandon Hagel, Seth Jarvis, and Travis Sanheim. The problem is, those were maybe 4 of the worst players on Team Canada. Mark Stone, I think, is a very good player, but he was not particularly good in a best-on-best setting, which this kind of is. Seth Jarvis was a healthy scratch, and their line mate will be Morgan Geekie, who I think is a good player, but he's not a star. In the line of Brandon Hagel, Chandler Stevenson, and Braden Shen. Braden Shen you could trade out for a couple people. Chandler Stevenson is very fast, but if you look at his underlying numbers, they're very bad. I'm just not sure that he's gonna really bring that much to the bottom line of this team other than being able to kill some penalties. The defense is a top pairing of Travis Sanheim and Damon Severson, and a second pairing of Ryan Pulak and Braden Schneider. Ryan Pulak was really good a few years ago. I'm just not sure that he is that guy anymore. If you asked me this a few years ago, I'd have said, wow, I really love Ryan Pulak. But here he's the second pair guy behind Travis Sanheim, who a lot of people really don't like. In net, Darcy Kemper, who probably is what boosts this team into 10th, and Connor Ingram, who is really struggling this year if you haven't seen it. But shout out to Darcy Kemper, though. Really great bounce back year. Sorry for putting 3 Canadian teams in a row. That's probably me being an American, but let's knock out some American teams. This is America's answer to Quebec being ranked really low, but New England is not very good. Of course, they have the superstar and Jack Eichel on the top line, with Matthew Boldy and Frank Vetrano as his 2 wings. Second line of Matty Beniers with 2 pretty decent wingers in Chris Kreider and Connor Garland. Now, the problem with this team is not the forwards. It's the defense and the goaltending. We have Luke Hughes, yes, just Luke Hughes, with Noah Hannafin, and John Carlson with John Marino. 2 pretty responsible defensemen in Hannafin and Marino, and 2 gunners in Hughes and Carlson. In net, it's not bad, but there are just too many American teams that have really good goalies or forward groups or defense corps that outweigh their goalies that New England can't really stack up with Joey Decord and Casey DeSmith. So both hosts of the Four Nations face-offs are out in Team Quebec and Team New England. Now, Team 7 and Team 8 are probably the closest to of any of the 2 teams on here, so I feel like I'm really splitting hairs. At number 8, we have my home conference, the Rust Belt, led by JT Miller, Logan Cooley, and Kyle Connor, with the second line of Alex DeBrincat, Dylan Larkin, and Brian Rust. I'm not overly thrilled with the forwards, but they're pretty good. I see the forward group on paper, and I think it's okay, but I think in practice it would be a pretty good group, though JT Miller did not impress me in the Four Nations Fury, and Kyle Connor ended up as a healthy scratch, but Dylan Larkin did end up being a major contributor later in the tournament. The top defense pairing is Zach Werenski with Matt Roy, and I think that would be awesome. Matt Roy's a really responsible defensive guy, and Zach Werenski was awesome at the Four Nations tournament. He was probably the US's best player other than maybe Austin Matthews. The second pairing of Jacob Trouba and Alec Martinez, the less said about them, the better. In net, though, we have the guy, we have Connor Hellebuck, and we have John Gibson. Did you guys know John Gibson's good again? He's been having a really nice season. But Connor Hellebuck is the best regular season goalie in the world. Now, if he can put it together in a postseason or this kind of tournament setting, that'd be awesome too. I don't blame him for the U.S. losing in 5 Iron Fury, but he was good.
I would have liked him to have been a little bit better.
Essentially, Team Rust Belt's mirror, we have the Midwest at number 7. Now, I'm not as sold on their forward group. We have Brock Nelson with Cole Caulfield and Brock Besser on the top line, with a second line of Anders Lee, Casey Middlestat, and Drake Batherson. I think Drake Batherson's pretty good. I think all of these guys are decent. But while I'm a little underwhelmed by the Midwest's forwards, their defense is spectacular. The pairing of Brock Faber with Ryan McDonough will be great at shutting chances down and also pushing the puck toward the opposition. While the second pair of Keandre Miller and Lane Hudson will be an adventure. Now, if this took place 2 years from now, and we're talking about Lane Hudson as Erik Karlsson, now we'll be really cooking. But if this takes place 2 years from now and we're talking about Lane Hudson as Tyson Barrie, then it'll be a different conversation. He's definitely one of those two things. Sometimes I see Keandre Miller and it's like, oh, this guy's completely checked out defensively and not great offensively. But then other times I see him and it's like, oh, this kid's gigantic and can really skate and really shut down plays. How much of that is the Rangers? How much of that is Keandre Miller? I don't know. So we'll see in this setting when he's forced to play defense with Lane Hudson. In net, we have another one of the U.S.'s elite goalies with Jake Ottinger, backed up by a pretty good goalie in Charlie Lindgren, though his Linsanity run is over. Lindsanity run is over. He's like Lindgren. Anyway, now we're into the top half, but honestly, if we were doing this in tiers, I would put number 6 in the exact same tier as those last two, and that's the Tri-State team. Tri-State also has some warts at forward. Trevor Zegras, Alex Tuck, and Patrick Kane are a good first line. I'm not as sold on their second line of Joel Farabee, Ross Colton, and Marcus Foligno. I do think they have maybe a top 3 defense group out of all of these teams, with Adam Fox and Charlie McAvoy, and Thomas Harley and Brett Pesce. Now, Thomas Harley, I know, plays for the Canadian national team, but he grew up in New York. He grew up in Syracuse, New York. He's counting as an American for this. He's counting as a New Yorker. I'm sorry, you have to wear the New York flag as your jersey, or the Connecticut flag. They look the same. Whatever. In net, now, I want to hate it, but Anthony Stolarz has been really good this year. And Spencer Knight's not bad at all, and I'm sure he could eventually become much better. I probably rank this team a little too high at 6, but I'm really sold on their defense, so. Now at number 5, we have Canada's contribution to this kind of middle tier with Team British Columbia. Of course, our top line center is Connor Bedard with Sam Reinhart and Kent Johnson. Let's see how Connor Bedard does with people who can play hockey. Our second line is Macklin Celebrini with Matt Barzal and Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. Technically 3 centers, but both Nuge and Barzal can play the wing plenty. On defense, we have Shea Theodore with Bowen Byram and Devon Taves with Morgan Riley. Now, I think Devon Taves really complements Morgan Riley. Riley's an all-out offense guy, and Devon Taves is a really good babysitter. Now, are they both left-handed? I think they are, yeah. But Devon's playing on his offside, or Riley's playing on his offside for the one-timers. Who knows? Now, what keeps Team British Columbia out of that top 4 really ultra echelon and keeps them kind of in the mid-muck is their goaltending. They have Aiden Hill. We know what Aiden Hill is. He goes out there and he plays behind the Golden Knights and he makes a couple saves if he needs to. And we have Tristan Jarry. So we have Aiden Hill. This is kind of the Team North America of this tournament. They're very young with Celebrini and Bedard and Johnson and Byram. So I think they could be kind of like a high flyer, like threat type team. And also they have 2 guys from Team North America, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins and Morgan Riley. Up next, we have From the Mountains to the Prairies, which is the big Frankenstein division. Now, the top line is the Arizona guys, Matthew Tkachuk, Tage Thompson, and Brady Tkachuk. Second line is Clayton Keller from Missouri, Jake Gensel from Nebraska, and Troy Terry from Colorado. Probably a top 3 second line. That's a really good group. Our defense pairings, we have Seth Jones with Jacob Slavin. Seth Jones is Seth Jones, man. He's been okay the past couple years, but at the end of the day, he's still Seth Jones. But his $9.5 million contract does not play a role here, so the Texan joins the squad. And then our second pairing is Jake Sanderson with Neil Pionk. I like Neil Pionk a lot. He's fast. He skates well, moves the puck well. And Jake Sanderson is really good. The thing that puts this team as number 4, probably the worst of the top tier teams, is their goaltending. And it's also why I had to give them the state of Missouri and therefore Clayton Keller. See, From the Mountains to the Prairies only has 1 goalie. They just have Joe Woll. Joseph Woll is not bad. He's perfectly okay, but he is not stacked up well against a lot of these other goalies, even the other Toronto starter and Stolarz. At the end of the day, does this team have firepower? Yes. Does this team have good defense? Yes, but you have to be able to stop some shots and have a guy who's really proven doing that, and I don't think Joseph Woll is that. Now on to our number 3 spot, another Canadian team, Team Alberta. Now this team does not have as much firepower as some others. They have Dylan Genther, Braden Point, and Jake DeBrusk as their top line, and Jake Neighbors, Dylan Holloway, and Taylor Hall as their second line. Do you know how many points Dylan Holloway has this year, by the way? That's crazy. I have a lot of Oilers fans in the audience. They probably knew that already. This team is almost all defense, and I feel like I weighed defense pretty heavily here, as you can tell by my other rankings. Our top pairing is going to be Caden Gooley with Cale Makar. I think those two are both great. How can you say anything about Cale Makar? And Caden Gooley can really play. He's a good player. And a second pairing of Josh Morrissey with Jared Spurgeon. Now, I don't think there's going to be a lot of chances against the Morrissey-Spurgeon pairing, especially the Spurgeon side. And that's okay, because we have a guy accustomed to playing behind a pretty decent all-around team and making those low-danger saves he needs to in Logan Thompson. Logan Thompson has been awesome this year. He should have been on Canada's roster for the Four Nations, but he wasn't, so he's here on Team Alberta. Backing him up is, of course, Alberta's own Stu Skinner. Now, this team does not have the firepower to win the whole thing, but they're going to win a lot of games 1-0 with a lot of puck-carrying defensemen. They're good. Number 2 will also kind of reveal who number 1 is, but at the number 2 spot, we have the final American team with the non-traditional squads. Now, this team is loaded, especially on their top line. Jason Robertson, Austin Matthews, and Jack Hughes. Matthews being born in California, Robertson being born in California, and Jack Hughes being born in Florida. Now, the second line of Jason Zucker, Trevor Moore, and Ryan Hartman, who's from South Carolina, did you know that? Leaves a little bit to be desired. Their defense has some firepower. We're putting the ultra high flying pair of Quinn Hughes and Shane Gostisbehere together, the 2 Florida guys. And the second pairing would be Jacob Chikrin and Cam York. It's good, but it's not incredible yet, until you remember Alaska, and here comes Jeremy Swayman as the number 1 goalie, backed up by Thatcher Demko. And hey, if one of them gets hurt, they can call in Dustin Wolf, who's not bad. The top forward line plus Quinn Hughes plus Jeremy Swayman really puts this team as almost number 1. But number 1 is, of course, Ontario. A top line of Connor McDavid, Mitch Marner, and Travis Konechny. A second line of Gabe Vilardi, Mark Scheifele, and Nick Suzuki, and many more who could have been in Suzuki's spot too. Then a defense core of Evan Bouchard with Mackenzie Weegar and Drew Doughty with Chris Tanev. I know one of them will have to play his offside, but still. That alone is enough. They could basically have anyone in goal and still probably be the best team on here. But they have Jordan Binnington. Now, does he start? He was really good in Four Nations. When I originally made this at the beginning of Four Nations, I didn't really have Jordan Binnington. He made some big saves for Team Canada. I know you Canadians really wanted to yell at Jordan Binnington the whole time. He wasn't that bad. He was pretty good, in fact. And I know you'll say the goals saved above expected. I like that statistic. I like it a lot. But you see, he made the big saves. Everybody says the Gensel goal was bad. Jake Gensel can shoot the puck, man. Jake Gensel can shoot the puck. But I honestly am not going with Jordan Binnington as my starter, because at the end of the day, he's still Jordan Binnington. I'm going with Mackenzie Blackwood, who has been terrific since joining the Avalanche especially, and was really good on that not good Sharks team. And you can see by Alex Georgiev that was not exactly a product of that Sharks team. So in the end, you can't beat Ontario. It's the most populous Canadian province. What are you going to do? I'm sorry, everyone else. I know this is what you expected, but it's just how it ended up. Guys, I think Connor McDavid is good. That's my big take. My big takeaway is that Connor McDavid is good, and so is Mitch Marner. Evan Bouchard should have been on Team Canada. Who's Travis Sanheim doing on there when you could have Evan Bouchard? Or even Mackenzie Weegar. I love Mackenzie Weegar. I wrote an article like 3 years ago about Mackenzie Weegar. I think it holds up. So that's it. Let me know of anything that I missed, any players that should have been on the rosters, any teams that I'm violently overrating. Feel free to yell at me in the comments about it. Please don't, actually. Please be nice to me. For those of you who stayed to the end of the video, I'll give a little update on the channel. If you don't want to hear that, go ahead and click away or write your comment down below and say your channel sucks. Where's the whiteboard? This isn't the hockey guy. Whatever. I'm hoping to upload more videos that aren't 2.5 hours long. Hoping to do a couple more single season retrospectives instead of the massive 6 years or 10 years or plus playoffs. I'm especially going to try and avoid playoffs because the NHL really doesn't like me to use clips of the playoffs, man. But yeah, so the content is going to be a tiny bit different, but it's still going to be my style of writing, my style of narration, my kind of thing. We'll probably use a few fewer game clips just so that the NHL can leave me alone. Oh, and at 10,000, I'm planning on launching a Patreon, so tell your friends to subscribe. I have 3,700, 3,800 or so right now. It'd be awesome to get to 10,000 by the end of the year. I would really be moved by that. So tell your friends, tell your family, tell your coworkers that you don't even like to subscribe. But overall, thank you guys so much for supporting the channel. As always, it really means a lot to me to have anybody who gives a crap about my feelings on hockey or anything. So thank you guys for being here. Thank you guys for watching different videos like this as well. Anyway, I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye-bye.